Hilchos Pesach, Rae Gann Halacha. Shinza Pesach Zacha Chatzos. You have to slaughter the Korban Pesach after Chatzos. Peirush explains. Bim Shochtoi, Koinam Chatzos Posel. So we darshan Mishnah Pesachim. It's brought down in the Kesef Mishnah. She'im Shochtoi Koinam Chatzos. It's possible because it says Beino Abayim. 6 hours and longer, it's called Bein Ha'abayim. Then the Shemesh, the sun starts to go down in the west. That's when it starts to go down. That seems to infer that if you slaughtered it after Chatzos, even right away, it's kosher. So we find in the beginning of Hilchos Pesach, the mitzvah says to slaughter the Korban Pesach after Chatzos. He doesn't mention the Tomit. And the Pri Megadim writes that the Rambam on the Torah explains the posuk that the chiv shlit is right after Chatzos until Shkiyas Hachama. However, halacha you mark the Pesach till 6 only after 12:30, just like Korban Tomit, not before 12:30. Why? Why doesn't he mention that? Because you can only bring it out. You're supposed to bring the Korban Pesach after the Tomit. And since the Korban Tomit you can't bring before 12:30, it requires that the Pesach has to wait until then for sure. Rambam continues saying, the source of this is in Mosdos Aleph. What's the reason? It says because by Tomit it says Bein Ha'abayim, in Pesach it says Be'erev, and it also says Bein Ha'abayim. So two things. Therefore, it's later than the Tomit, even though the Tomit is usually the last korban that's done during the day. The Machon Nesher says, even if the time became late, there's no time to bring both. The korban Tomit is first because Toder she'eino Toder koinem. Now, after we bring the Kteiros, and after they fix the candles, that's when you bring it. In other words, even though we find again in Machon Nesher HaGadol that this is the Makor, there's disagreement with the Pesach before Hatovas HaNeiros, making the candelabra, or the Neiros are first. In the Kesef Mishnah, right, the Rambam Paskins, the Neiros are first. Why? Because their reasoning is more logical. What does he mean? Because it says Bein Erev Bein Ha'abayim. In Pesach it says later Be'erev and Gam Bein Ha'abayim. The same inference we use, the proof that we use regarding the Tomit, that the Korban Pesach is after the Korban Tomit. For this reason, the Rambam Paskins, the Neiros are before Pesach. But the Pnei Yeshua understood the Kesef Mishnah as arguing the Neiros proceed because Toder v'she'eino Toder. The Neiros are something you bring every day, so therefore it comes obviously before Pesach, which is only brought once a year, or twice a year on Pesach Sheni. Now, except for the Korban Tomit and Hatovas HaNeiros that precede the Korban Pesach, there's also Keteris. Yerushalmi says the reason is because the Keteris, the incense, was brought every day between after they slaughtered the Tomit Bein Ha'abayim, the afternoon Tomit, and before you brought up the limbs on the Mizbeach, it was brought after bringing up the limbs and before putting the nechosim, the nesochov, on the Mizbeach, in order to make them the Keteris as close as possible to the Tomit. Therefore, they made the Keteris also before the Pesach because it's associated every day with the Korban Tomit. Pnei Yeshua questions, after Keteris and the Neiros, they would also bring the Minchas Tomit, the Menochos, the wheat part of the Korban, grain part of the Korban, the flour part of the Korban, and the Mincha Chavit, and also the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol brought every day half of his offering by morning, and half in the afternoon. If we'll say that Keteros and Neiros become are before the Pesach, how could they do in a half hour between the shlitas to Tomid, the shlitas at Pesach, so many different items? What is it? What is it? To slaughter the Tomid, to spray the blood, to take off the skin, to cleanse the innards, to bring up the limbs on the mizbeach, and active teres to bring teres, later as a neres, to prepare the neres, and also to do the Mechos HaTomid, Mechos HaChaviten, V'esan HaSochem. And he has a question about it. How could it all be done so fast? And the Rambam continues that you can bring it at Seif HaYom. Even by Korban Tomid, the Rambam writes that Tomid can be slaughtered until the end of the day. We have to clarify, what's the end of the day? Does it mean when the stars come out or when the sun goes down? And therefore, and we'll know what it means till when you can daven mincha that they made in the place of Tomash Rabbeinu HaBoyim. It's well known the machloikis, the disagreement between Rishonim, how do you reckon shiur? Rashi and other Rishonim that it means when the sun goes down until Tzesek Chom. That's the time of 3/4 of a mil, and it's called Ben Hashmoshes. Now, Ben Hashmoshes is when we don't know whether it's day or night. Or many times with the opinion that shiur only starts until Tzesek Chom. There's 4 mil from sunset till the stars come out, and that's why Tosfos, the Bali Tosfos call Soif Shiur. It says in the Mishnah, Brachos 26, until this mincha is until night. Rabbi Yehuda says until an hour and a quarter before nightfall. Rabbi Yoina says Ado Erev, when it says till night, it means until the sun goes down, because we learn in Zvachim 56a that the dam of the korban becomes possible. You can't use it, you can't put it on the mizbeach after Shkiyas HaChamor, once the sun has gone down. And just like this, the time of the spraying of the dam is until Shkiyas HaChamor, so to the time of Mincha is a shiur mahalach Abba Milan, is going 4 mil before Tzesek Chom. Now, by the blood, by the Hazoros Hadam, they said in Zvachim 56a that it becomes possible b'shkiyas HaChamor. And Tosfos learns only because in Pesach the Chacham made it possible b'shkiyah in order to make them do it more quickly. But other karbonos, including Korban Tomid, you can really do it till Tzesek Chom. There's another shita that we find in Tosfos, in Menachos, that all the karbonos the Chachamim made a person distance himself and do it earlier, because according to this shita, there's a question if whether mincha, the not to pray after shkia, or by mincha they weren't machmer rachomim, and therefore you can pray until Tzesek Chom. The Shagas Arya is the opinion like the first opinion of Tosfos in Zvachim. Only by Korban Pesach they were machmer, but by other karbonos they wouldn't pass it until Tzesek Chom. According to this, even till mincha you can daven until Tzesek Chom. Shagas Arya infers this from what Rambam writes in Hilchos Ma'aseh Karbonis, how the Karbonis were brought. The dam hakorban nisel rak b'tzeis hakechovim, that the blood only becomes possible at the time of tzeis hakechovim. From where does he learn it from? Because we find the Issa Posik, he attaches the learning of it from the Peirush HaMeir, because it says Vayikra b'yom tzavoisoi, on the day that he was commanded. So you see, you have to do it by day, not at night. Even though the Rambam writes there that Shkiyas HaChamor becomes postal down, it means at the end of Shkiyah, which is when the stars come out. And what we mentioned by Pesach Sheni, that he's rochling Yerushalayim, that the other Rishonim actually say until Shkiyas HaChamor. Rambam's sheet is not like that. Rambam says till Chatzois, but the others is Mishum. When the Tam says, the Shagas Arya says, because of Shkiyas HaChamor, you cannot slaughter it anymore, because it says Bein HaBoyim, and it's no longer Bein HaBoyim after the Shkiyah. According to the Chachamim, would disagree with Rabbi Yehuda. The Ramban, Shmois 12:6, writes, Shetzivisi Shivono, that the Torah commanded us B'Shchoitas HaPesach until the beginning of Shkias HaChamor. That the commandment of the Torah to slaughter the Pesach is until the beginning of Shkias HaChamor. But other services are kosher until Teisei Gechovim. He writes further, the Bein HaAboyim, that's an hour and a quarter before nightfall. Shagas Arya questions that that's only according to Rabbi Yehuda, but the Racham of the opinion that Bein HaAboyim is definitely until the sun goes down. And why is the Rambam paskin like Rabbi Yehuda? Furthermore, what the Ramban writes that only shchita is the Bein HaAbayim, but other avoiders, other services can be done until Teisei Gechovim. The Shagas Arya says that's only by Pesach. But Tomash Bein HaAbayim, it says Tasa Bein HaAboyim. It means the whole thing should be done prior to sunset. So according to the way we're learning it, and therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Tzilas HaMincha is only till an hour and a quarter before sunset. According to the Achomim, that they also it said by Talmud, it's only regarding the shlita, the slaughtering, but the other avodas can be done till Teisei Gechovim, and therefore Tzilas HaMincha, the time is till Teisei Gechovim. And the conclusion of the Shagas Arya is that Achomim admit Rabbi Yehuda, the Bein HaAboyim is till Plag HaMincha. That's the end of the time of Yeshech Pesach and the Talmud. And they only disagree whether the other avodas can be done later or until nightfall. Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that all the avodas of the Talmud have to be before an hour and a quarter before. And Achomim of the opinion that the other avodas can be done until Teisei Gechovim. The Rambam in Hilchos Chametz and Musafim he concludes the Machlokes of Racham Rabbi Yehuda that the Talmud Bein HaAbayim you slaughter from when the shade begins to, in other words, it becomes to be a shade in the Beis HaMikdash till the end of the day. Shagas Arya says, how can you say that shlit is till the end of the day? The Gemara did not conclude between the Machlokes of Yehuda and Chachamim when is Bein HaAboyim. Certainly, Hilchos Tefillah, the Rambam says that lachatchila like Rabbi Yehuda, you should be mispal mincha before sunset. Why? By Karbonos, he seems to accept it so lightly that you can do it even after sunset till the stars are out. Furthermore, regarding the slaughtering of the Pesach that he writes till the end of the day, there's a question: why weren't they machmer from the concept of sveike deraisa lechumra? Thus we see that till Seif HaYoim, the Rambam writes, means till Teisei Gechovim, because otherwise he would be machmer from Sofik. But your Makayim, the Korban Pesach is a deraisa. Mishnah and Hilchos Mincha, besides the Machlokes Rishonim, if you count the day from morning star till stars are out, or from sun up until sunset. According to those who say you do it from the morning star until when the stars come out, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you can daven mincha until an hour and a quarter before Teisei Gechovim. According to Chachamim, you can daven even till the stars are out. According to those who make the cheshbon, they reckon the day from sunrise till sunset. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you can daven mincha until an hour and a quarter before Shkia, not Teisei Gechovim. Rabbanan until Shkia. According to this logic, there are many Achronim who have that opinion, and therefore lachatchila shouldn't daven mincha after Shkias HaChamor, but the Eved, you can rely on those who are more lenient and can daven until a quarter of an hour before the stars come out. The Rambam continues, if he slaughtered after Chatzois, Kodim Talmud Bein HaAbayim kosher. Before the Talmud Bein HaAbayim, it's kosher. The year Echad Memaris, but somebody should mix the blood so it doesn't coagulate. So that there'll be a half blood to spray after the time of the Damatomit. So you save the blood. And then you spray after the blood of the Tomet has been placed on the Mizbeach. you then place the dam of the Pesach on the Mizbeach. But in the instance of afterwards, they did it already. They sprayed it on after and before the dam atomet, meaning they put the dam atomet after the Pesach. It's still kosher. Now, Marie Korkis in Hilchos Tvin in Musafim explains that even though the halacha is toda, that which is more often, it precedes that which it doesn't come as often, and you should therefore do the Talmud prior to the Pesach. It's brought down in the Gemara, that's only to begin with. But if you slaughtered already, the Korban Pesach, you should not wait with the bringing of the blood before the blood of the Korban Talmud. Then also, if he comes to ask, what should he put on first? The Korban Dam or the Korban Pesach immediately after slaughtering, or before, meaning before the bringing of the blood of the Talmud on the Mizbeach, we tell him you should do it first. You don't wait. But if they slaughtered the Talmud already, then you should wait, and then bring the blood of the Pesach. The Sefer HaMoriah, he cites that the Kiddush Yankiv disagrees and says that for Pesach and Talmud, since there's a posting that says specifically that you have to bring the Pesach after the Talmud Shel Ben Habayim, therefore, even if you did not yet bring the Talmud, we say you should wait. And then, only after the blood of the Talmud has been brought, should he bring the blood of the Pesach. The Tosim Sochen, they ask, why do you need a posting? The Talmud is before Pesach. It's Torah v'she'eina Torah. That which is customary or more usual precedes that which is not so usual. According to that, would seem there's no difference whether we learn the concept of preceding the Talmud from a posik or from Torah is first, that which is more often precedes that which is less often. There is a meach here writes that the posik from which we learn that the Korban Talmud is before the Korban Pesach is only regarding the slaughtering. But as far as the blood goes, the blood of the Talmud precedes the blood of the Pesach is because of Torah. The posuk can tell us that there's a separate reason that you have to slaughter the Korban Pesach after the Talmud. But there's the aspect of putting the blood down, that's because of which is more usual, the Talmud, not the Pesach. And therefore, there are Korkas who says, if you slaughter the Talmud, once you slaughter the Talmud, then you have to mix the dam of the Pesach. You can't bring it until afterwards. Remember, the Rebbe Korkas says, before you slaughter the Talmud, you can bring it. But after you slaughter it, you should wait till after the blood is brought. But if they didn't slaughter the Talmud, then he can put on the Dam Pesach and then slaughter and put the blood of the Dam Talmud on the Mizbeach. From the Rambam's language, which he says that if he slaughtered it after Chatzos, before the Talmud Shel Ben Habayim, it would seem that Shlitas HaPesach it begins after midday. Regarding this, we always do it a little bit after Chatzos, and the Rambam explains this in the Hilchos, which have to do with Midim and Musafim, the daily communal sacrifices of the Talmud and the Musafim, and the Musaf, which is brought on special holidays, which is a communal sacrifice. They slaughter them from when the shadow begins to lengthen, and everyone notices it. And that's from 6.5 hours. Because on Chatzos, at midday, the sun is in the center of the sky, or the highest point in the sky, and you can't tell that it's begun to lengthen. The Korban Talmud you bring from when it begins to lengthen, a half hour after Chatzos. Therefore, the Mechas Chinuch asks the question, where do you learn that there's a difference between the time of the Shlitas HaPesach, which is at Chatzos, specifically, to the time of the Talmud Shel Ben Habayim, which is brought after Chatzos. In both of them it says Ben Habayim. And the time of The exact time of the Korban Tomid depends also for Mincha to tell us, as we learned earlier, that when do you start to daven Mincha, how early, and when you bake matzahs, those who do so Erev Pesach, would depend upon when you can bring the Korban Pesach, whether it exactly at midday or a half hour later. Ravim Sochem says, the mitzvah of Tomid is from when the shadows of the evening start to lengthen, because the Torah says Beino Aboyim. And Rashi explains that Rav is of the opinion that all 6 hours of the last 6 hours of the day, when you divide the day into 12 hours, it's kosher to bring the Tomid. But at the end of his words, he writes that you can bring it only from 6.5 hours. And from Tosfos, it would seem that you can begin to slaughter the Tomid immediately after Chatzos, but they waited that extra half hour because the walls of the Beis Hamikdash were at an angle, and you couldn't tell that the shadows had begun to lengthen to the west. Now the poskim, those who codify the law, disagree with regard to Melocha on Erev Shabbos, doing work Erev Shabbos. When do you have to stop? The Pri Chodosh writes that since Mika Hadin, it would be possible to bring the Tomid Minat Torah from the beginning of the 7th hour, therefore it's forbidden to do a Melocha on Yom Shishi from the beginning of the 7th hour. And he disagrees with the Torah, who writes that the Issa is only from 6.5 hours. Therefore, if a person daven Mincha from Chatzos, from the midday, B'diavad, you can fulfill your obligation because it's not too early. And also, the Rambam writes in Hilchos Tefillah, if he made a mistake and he did not daven Shachris, and that half hour is still there, or rather it's past, he has to daven Mincha twice. Because the Mishnah writes, no, it doesn't mean exactly half a day, but it means that half hour after the half a day. But the Pri Chodesh is the opinion that the Rambam intends really to say half a day itself, at the end of the 6th hour. We find also in the Ramah that after Chatzos you can't daven Shachris, meaning as soon as the 6 hours are up, not 6.5 hours. The Shulchan Aruch writes, there's a minhag not to make the matzahs mitzvah on Erev Pesach until after the 6th hour. And Machon Nesher writes that you can start to mix it from Chatzos, and even though the Korban Pesach is a half hour after Chatzos, the main time is from Chatzos. But according to the Bach and the Taz, you shouldn't even mix the water, only from 6.5 hours. Now, Maliom Mizrachi on the Smag has a question. Do you bring the Chagigas Yudalit after the Talmud, just like Pesach, the Korban Pesach? The Chagiga was brought if, let's say, there were 100 people on the Korban Pesach, each one had only a kazayas, and you have to eat the Korban Pesach when you're basically full. So you bring a Chagiga to make sure you're full before you eat that kazayas. Or do you bring the Chagiga after Chatzos, before the Talmud? Or you can even bring the Chagiga in the morning. And he says that the whole day is kosher for the Chagiga. The Mishnah Melech questions, it says Be'erev. How could it be brought before Chatzos? And even though the Mishnah Melech did not decide the issue, he remained with the question. It's definite that it's brought before Talmud Shel Bein HaAbayim. The Pnei Yeshua writes that you have to bring it before Talmud Shel Bein HaAbayim, like all the Karbonis. And even will say that Chagigas Yudalit is deraisa, and this is even though the Lashon of the Mishnah Sochem is that you only bring the Chagiga. Now there's a question whether you always have to bring a Chagiga, or it's only when you have too many mouths to fill from the Pesach, and there it says you bring it after Tomid Shebein Harbayim. It seems you bring it at the same time as you bring the Korban Pesach. Now Tosfos has a question. The Pesach Sheni, when do you bring the Tomid Shebein Harbayim? Like in the first Pesach, before the Pesach Sheni, or only in Pesach Rishon it says we learn Erev and Bein HaAbayim that you have to bring it after the Tomid. And they decide the issue. Pesach Sheni is brought before the Tomid, because it says just Bein HaAbayim. The Mishnah Melech says that you can't bring proof to this to Chagigas Yudalit, since Pesach Sheni comes from the strength of the first one. Therefore, Pesach Sheni is brought only after the Toma Shel Ben Abayim. But for sure, the Chagigas Yidalid, it's enough that we permit it to be slaughtered after Chatzos, and we can't learn to make it more later than the Tomid. The Oyer Chodosh writes, according to the Rambam, Pesach Sheni is brought before the Tomid. We don't say, like we say by the first one, let it come later, something that mentions Erev, Ubein HaBoyim, which means from Pesach, Mibnei Dovo, which refers to the Tomid, that it says, Bo, only Bein HaBoyim alone. And therefore you bring the Pesach Sheni before Toma Shel Ben Abayim. And he proves that the Rambam had to give a reason for the reasoning of the Torah in Hilchos Chametz U'Matzah. That you don't bring the Korban Pesach Rishon before the Talmud, because it's impossible that everyone should bring their Pesachim in their 2 hours. Because he wants to explain why, to the page, why Pesach Sheni is brought before the Talmud. Pesach Sheni, there wasn't that many korbanos, because you always bring a Pesach Sheni only if it's the lesser, it's the other half that's not as great as the first half. And therefore, technically, you should be able to bring it within 2 hours before the Toma Shel Ben Abayim. So the Chassam Sofer asks the question, why when the Mishnah Pesachim tells us the differences between Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni, it doesn't mention this is different. And Pesach Rishon is done after the Talmud Shel Ben Abayim. And Pesach Sheni is done before the Talmud. And he explains that the Mishnah didn't have to tell us this difference because it's simple. It's understood. And this is what the Rambam hints at. He says Pesach Rishon, there are many korbanos that you don't have enough time in 2 hours to bring all of them. And Pesach Sheni had much fewer korbanos. We should note that according to Chacham Tzvi, Pesach Sheni was also brought after Toma Shel Ben Abayim because of the logic that since the mitzvah of bringing a korban Pesach Sheni has chorus, and it should push away the asay, a regular asay, that you shouldn't have anything brought after the Talmud. It's only an asay. In Sefer Abba Turi Evan, he says the Yerushalmi, the time of the Pesach Sheni was after the Toma Shel Ben Abayim, like the Chacham Tzvi, not like the Chassam Sofer and the Oyer Chodosh. The Minchas Chinuch learns from the Rambam, till Tzesek Yechom you can slaughter the Pesach, but the Ramban, in Parashas Boy, explains the Ben HaBoyim means within the time of Ben HaBoyim, that means from 6 hours till the beginning of Shkias HaChamo. Therefore, there's no proof as to whether it means when the stars are out or until sunset.